Hello and welcome to the Cinema ATL Podcast. The Cinema ATL Podcast is a weekly podcast that examines the world of entertainment through the lens of local Atlanta filmmakers. That would be us, your hosts. I'm Michael D. Friedman, and that is...
Martin Kelley.
And this week we have a big movie review for you. We're going to be looking at The Little Things, which is now in theaters and on HBO Max. But first, Martin, why don't you tell our listeners how they can help us out?
Sure, you can help us out by going to your favorite podcast platform, listen to us, subscribe, rate us, and comment there. That brings more attention to the podcast and helps us out quite a bit. So where are these formats you speak of? Well, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and more. And also now on YouTube as well as Google Podcasts.
Yes, and we'd also like to hear from you. Please tweet us at CinemaATL and let us know what you're thinking of the podcast. You can also get me at my personal account at Badger33.
Or catch me at Marte_Real1.
And then also I encourage you to check out our Instagram at CinemaATL Podcast. I've been putting a lot of different things up there, and I hope you guys are enjoying it.
Yeah, definitely. And also you can still listen to us at the regular website, cinemaatl.com.
And before we get into our review of Little Things, I want to actually let people know that we were actually guested on the Bionic Frankenplot podcast, which is out now. Our episode is out now, so we encourage you to check that out as well. It was a lot of fun doing that. And actually next week we'll be talking with John Pruner, who is the host of that podcast. So check that out next week. But this week we're talking about The Little Things. So, The Little Things. So, spoiler warning before we start. Don't worry about spoilers right away. We're going to do a spoiler-free discussion before we get to our spoiler talk, since this movie has some interesting things that we want to talk about. And we'll give you ample warning before we start our spoilers. So, you'll be able to listen up until then, and you can feel free to drop off when we give the spoiler warnings. But
yeah, but you can listen if you haven't seen it until then. Until we say spoilers, you can listen to the discussion and let us know what you thought if you've seen The Little Things. And so,
yeah.
The Little Things is about Kern County Deputy Sheriff Joe Deacon, who's sent to Los Angeles for what should have been a quick evidence gathering assignment. Instead, he gets embroiled in the search for a serial killer who happens to be terrorizing the city.
Yes, and this film stars a great cast, actually. 3 Oscar winners. Denzel Washington, Rami Malek, and Jared Leto. It was written and directed by John Lee Hancock, who also did The Blind Side and is also a writer on some other films as well. The DP was John Schwartzman, who was probably best known for Seabiscuit and Armageddon. And then, yeah, so that's the tale of The Little Things. Martin... Well, I guess we would jump into some general thoughts on this. I thought I really did enjoy the cast in this. I will say that.
Definitely, I think you couldn't ask for sort of a better casting for the main roles in this, and I really thought it was a great performance again from Denzel. I mean, it's like it goes without saying he's going to do a great job, but I think he does a really nice job in this film.
Has there ever been a bad Denzel movie? I mean, not. I mean, he's been in some not good movies, but I mean, has there ever been a bad performance by Denzel? I don't know if there is one.
I don't think so, but what impresses me about this one is this film doesn't work without him. You know what I mean? Without this
right.
This grounded performance that he gives. You don't have a movie without this performance. Like he's always good and everything, but some of the movies that that would be movies without him, and this kind of wouldn't be a movie without him, in my opinion.
And what I liked about this performance is we know that Denzel can be, chew up some dialogue, and be a bigger than life, a person on the screen, look at the Training Day and other things like that. But this one, like you said, I think he's really subdued in the role, but he does it with such great, aplomb that it really works within the realm of the film. I enjoyed his performance tremendously. Rami Malek, I love Rami Malek. his character was a little interesting to me. It took me a while to get into his role as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think we'll probably talk a lot more about that part of it in this after the spoiler alert. But yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with you. In an I think one of the other things to talk about other than the cast is the story itself is like an homage to like '90s films and the traditional sort of thriller, detective,
Hmm.
procedural thrillers, and it was actually set in the '90s. And a fun fact, actually, it was written in the '90s. this was
Yeah.
a this was John Lee Hancock's one of his first screenplays, actually, and it hasn't been made until now. So that kind of gives you sort of the idea of where this thing, lives. This story lives kind of in the '90s.
Yeah, it did feel a lot like those movies like Seven or Silence of the Lambs or Kiss
Yeah,
the Girls or something that would have been released in the 90s. And in a way that was really actually really enjoyed that. I really thought it felt like an homage to those movies, something that we don't see enough of these days. I think
I
uh,
agree. Yeah. I think that's part of the appeal and why I was excited to see it actually, when I saw the trailer is that wow, this feels like, the kind of movies they don't make much anymore is these sort of
yeah.
just plot driven personal stories, crime stories and again, it used to be a tried and true genre, the serial killer story, the pursuit of the serial
Well,
killer.
I think they've moved into TV shows now, right? I mean, it
True,
feels like
true. Yeah.
this is something you'd see on True Detective or, was it Mindhunter or something like
Yeah,
that,
yeah, absolutely.
like they've really gone into these realms of long form storytelling, which kind of does give the characters room to breathe and but it's also nice to just not have to invest that much
Right.
into a story like this and just have a 2 hour movie, which I actually really appreciated the movie for that. I really I did really feel like I was taken back to those days of those types of movies, and it wasn't too dark or either, right? I mean, a lot of people are comparing it to Seven and stuff like that.
Yeah, it was nowhere near as
It's
dark as
not
Seven.
that
Yeah.
dark, right?
Right,
Yeah,
right.
which I kind of appreciated too, because in this day and age, where you
Yes.
kind of don't want to be too depressed about a
Right.
movie. I mean, this is about serial killer, but still, it wasn't gruesome, and you didn't feel unwashed after watching it.
No, totally. Yeah, I mean, I agree that if we would have had something on the par of Seven and the darkness in Seven, which Seven is one of my favorite films actually, but
Mhm.
if I would watch Seven now for the first time, I would probably really hate it, just because that we got so much other real problems going on that we wouldn't need to go that dark for a movie
Yeah,
experience. So I did appreciate that too, that it wasn't as dark, but it was still had enough gravity to it to be interesting.
I want to go back to the acting a little bit. Like, I wanted to say that I did appreciate Rami Malek's character as the film progressed a little bit more than I did at the beginning, and this is a movie that I think I would have to go back and watch again. And I don't want to go too far into spoilers, so I'll leave that for later. But I think some of the performances are very nuanced in a way that you don't really understand until you get to the end of the film.
Right,
Um,
right,
and so I did really appreciate Rami Malek at the end. And then Jared Leto plays the suspected killer that they're on the trail of, and
right.
he's creepy.
Yeah,
I'll give
definitely.
him that. He's definitely creepy. So I give him, good marks for that. Some people might think that he's a little too like out there for this more realistic type film, but then again, he's
I don't
wanted.
know. Yeah,
They're suspected he's a serial killer.
right,
So
exactly, exactly. And that's not a spoiler. That's totally in the trailer.
no, yeah, no, I'm not giving anything away.
But yeah, I agree. I thought he did a good job of being very very creepy in this particular role for sure.
And then we mentioned how it's like the story was written in the '90s,
Hmm.
and it takes place in the '90s. So it's kind of interesting that the writer director John Lee Hancock didn't update it for a more modern take.
Yeah, I
And
think
I don't know really why he chose it like that, but I don't know. Maybe it was to give an homage back to those stories.
I think that's part of it, and I think also maybe you know maybe part of the idea of because one of the things that happens is sort of they kind of introduce one of the characters to the new world of detectives, which you know what I mean is not even close to the new world of detectives. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
at
that's
the
true.
time it may have been sort of a revolutionary step in that era. You know what I mean? From the era that the character had been from. So maybe that was part of it is to keep it set in that era where there was a jump in that era of detective work and technology to be able to sort of use that for what it was because
Yeah.
nobody would be surprised today at the way things the way the technology that's used in trying to solve crimes.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I guess that does make sense, and in a way, it also does solve some of the problems that you might have if you set this in the current day. You don't
Right,
have, the cell phones weren't prevalent back then. You don't have didn't have cameras everywhere.
right.
So maybe it is a tale that could only be told around that time frame. It was nice. I really did appreciate their attention to detail with that, though. Like, there was a lot of cars in this movie, and they were
Yeah,
all,
definitely.
right. I mean, I'm not a car buff, so there might have been some inaccuracies, but it did feel like you were, in those like
Yeah,
late
yeah,
model
no
80s
Teslas,
cars and stuff
no
like that. No,
Teslas running
no
around.
Tesla on the road. Um, and then the cinematography, I didn't see anything in it that really blew me away, but there was just kind of a feel, like we talked about the tone that was set, like this dark but not too dark
Right.
tone. And I think what the cinematographer did was really in tune with that. So
Yeah.
nothing
Yeah.
like flashy like you would see like in a Fincher film or something like that, but it was definitely solid, and I did appreciate it.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. I agree. I agree. Very solid film all around. All around.
Well, all right. Before we get into spoilers, why don't we kind of give our almost final thoughts and a rating? Not
Sure.
final thoughts, but our like wrap up our summary and give it a rating.
Yeah, and then we can really start talking.
Yeah, yeah.
So for me, I would give this film like a B plus, just based on the strength of the performance um, from Denzel. Everything else was really good about the film. Um, didn't didn't escalate into seven territory as far as that type of greatness, but just based on the strength of Denzel's performance, I give it a B plus.
I'm gonna just totally agree with you. B plus for me too. After reading some of the negative reviews on it, I thought I was expecting something a lot worse, and so maybe it was my lowered expectations. But I really enjoyed the film. Like you said, Denzel's great in it, and the performances are really good. And I just enjoyed being taken back to that era. It's kind of
Yeah,
weird
yeah.
to say that
No,
about
no,
a serial
definitely.
killer movie, but it just felt like the movies I would watch in the '90s that I would enjoy.
Well,
So
I think it wasn't necessarily us being nostalgic for the era itself, but the type of filmmaking that we kind of grew up on and sort of really started to appreciate film in that era. You know what I mean? And the fact that
yeah,
these are the kind of films that were prevalent and it really felt like one of those films that that was a serious film. You know what I mean? But um, but not like I said, not too outrageous, but a solid, well-made film. And so
yeah,
that part of it is, I think, what you and I probably were drawn to nostalgically about the era of filmmaking, not necessarily the era
yeah,
itself.
yeah. Solid filmmaking, um, well told story, told at a deliberate pace.
Right.
Like it's not. There's no action sequences, that no card chases, really. Nothing, nothing like that. But it just was a well told story, and
No,
I
definitely.
think there's something that we don't have a lot of that anymore. That, like, you got these three great actors, and you let them do their work and not have to rely on you know flashiness. So
Right. definitely. I agree. I agree. So, I think that wraps up the non-spoiler piece of this. So,
Yes.
for now, if you haven't seen the film and you don't want to hear any more about it, here's where
We'll
we're
see you
gonna
next
get.
week.
Yeah, exactly. See you next week. Please subscribe and all that good stuff, please. But we're gonna talk some stuff that could be a little bit of a spoiler, and
Right.
discuss it a little bit more deeply. So
Right.
that's your warning. So, what part do you want to talk about in more
Um,
detail?
I want to talk about what I really, really liked about the ending of this movie.
Okay. Okay.
I
Great.
really enjoyed the fact that it's an ambiguous ending,
Hmm.
that you do not know if he's the bad guy or not.
Right.
You have your
Right.
assumptions,
Yeah.
and you probably are right. You might be right, but it's. I love it that they left it ambiguous, and most films don't have the balls to do that.
Right. Right. And I like it. And we talked a little bit about the reviews aren't very glowing for this film at all,
Yeah.
which I did not see any of them until after I saw it. So I was a little bit surprised to see that because I had a good reaction to the film. But in the reviews, to me, I don't think they really got to appreciate what's going on. There's a moral choice being made in the film at
Hmm.
one point that I don't think people. I don't know if people are comfortable with moral choices anymore. You know what I mean? And maybe
Yeah.
that's part of why uh, nobody's resonating with this film because they're talking about things that I don't think are really there. I think on the surface, like everyone's talking about the title, the little things, and they are equating that with some message about the little things being important. I don't think that's the message at all. You know what I mean? I don't think
No.
that's not anywhere near the message I got out of it. You know what I mean? So I'm a little perplexed at what the critics are not seeing in the film.
And I also think that they don't see. And I talked a little bit about how Rami Malek's character. I liked him more as the film went on, and I really think that's the deft writing of this script is that this character is evolving, but also some of the stuff that he says and some of the stuff that Denzel Washington's characters say, you don't really understand it because they're not on the surface. They're saying something, but they're really meaning something different. And I
Right.
think that this film is actually one that's going to get better upon multiple viewings because you're going to understand the motivations of all of these characters, you
Yeah.
know, and you see it from a different point of view. Some of what Denzel does, well, he doesn't do it. Deke, the character, does it, and the film could be questioned at the beginning, but then when you really start, understanding his character and his motivations, you start realizing, what's driving him and how these things have worked out in the past that really
Right.
affect his current state. And same thing with Rami Malek's character. You know,
So
it's just it works on so many levels, and that's what I really appreciated about it.
no, I definitely agree. And what I think, part of the richness of the story is how Denzel, in his own way, is trying to make the world right again after after tragedy befell him, but also at the same time he sort of accepts in his own way responsibility for his own
Hmm.
tragic ending. You know what I mean? And so
Right.
uh, I think that type of character is fascinating. Where he knows he's responsible for his own tragic life, and yet he's still working to try and make the world better. And he does it in a way that is not in some ways a righteous choice, but at the same time, who's to say whether it actually is righteous or not? You know what I mean?
Right.
Because
Right.
I think he sees more good out of what he's going to do uh, coming out of it than the opposite, like than the other alternative. You know what I mean?
And I just love the way that they presented that reveal
Yeah,
of the hair beret.
yeah, yeah.
I would maybe I'm just stupid because like some other people were like, "Oh, I knew that right away." I didn't, and I thought it was a great shows that he's putting the burden on his shoulders. He's taking it off of
Yes,
the Rami Malek's character and putting it on his, and uh, like you said, like he's making the decision that he's a good guy and he needs to be, focused on the future and what he can do in the
right,
future and not dwell on,
right, and not
one moment.
right, he was undone by a moment that he couldn't deal with, right?
Hmm.
He was undone, and he had been this very positive force in the world. I mean, he had been the best detective, solving all the crimes and getting the bad people off the street, right? And then now Rami Malek is sort of that version of himself, um, and he doesn't want to see that ruined. He is trying to protect that innocence in a way, and it's not innocence, but this protect that psyche from going off the rails like he did. Because that doesn't do the world any good. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It didn't do the world any good when the character, Deacon's character, had his issue, right? It didn't
Right.
do the
Right.
world as a whole any good when that happened. So he's trying to keep that from happening again, and this is his way to do it. And I thought it was, like you said, it's easy to say I knew that, but I didn't knew it. I didn't know it
Yeah.
either. You know what I mean? So I thought it was, really, really good and really well done, and again said a lot about human nature and the fact that you know morality is gray. Morality is gray, but you
Yeah.
can you can push it. You can push it in the positive direction, even under gray circumstances. And I
Right.
think
Right.
I think ultimately that's what he does, even though it costs something. And I think that's the other thing that people didn't pick up in the film is that things cost. You know what I mean? Actions cost, and I don't know
Yeah.
that people are willing to sort of understand that. You know what I mean? I think that's the other thing that people don't like to embrace is that, there are repercussions for actions. And this
Right.
film kind of really shows that.
Yeah. No, I enjoyed that aspect of it as well. And then if you talk about, you mentioned people like going off on little things. It's like, this is the little thing, right? Literally, not figuratively.
Right,
Literally, this
right.
this hair beret is a little thing
Yeah,
that will get you caught or will save you in this
right.
case. So it is very significant in that regard. Um, and then, so some of the other things I want to talk about. There was a point of contention I know that other people had with the ending when Baxter gets in the car with Sparma. Why does he do that? It's so irrational. But I think to defend it, I'm going to say this is why you set the film in the 90s, right? This
Yes.
is
Uh-huh.
like, so like there is no way for him to track him otherwise. This is his chance. This is his moment. Plus he's not being rational at this point anyway.
No.
He is they kind of show that he is, running on fumes,
Yeah.
um, and has already had a breakdown in the car,
Right.
earlier. To me, it does make sense that he does it, and to use that as a flaw. Oh, this destroys the whole movie. Why would he do that? I don't think it does.
No, I agree with you. And, people maybe have forgotten sort of what's happening at this point. I mean, this is his last chance to get the guy he really believes is the guy.
Yeah,
Otherwise it's going to be a whole new ball game the next day. The very next day is going to be a whole new ball game, and the guy may be gone forever, right? Especially considering what Denzel and he are doing at this point. You know what I mean?
right,
If they don't get him now, that guy could easily be gone tomorrow. You know what I mean? And they'll never get him. And so it makes sense for this for the time period, like you said, but also for the character who's at the end of his rope. It's something he would do to make sure that he doesn't lose his opportunity to get his man. You know what I mean?
right, right. Well, what else do you got?
Well,
What else do you want to talk about before?
I know that there's the other thing, and and I can't refute if you refute it, there's a critique about the women's roles in the film. But you know,
Right. Right.
the three main characters are men, and that just happens to be the case. You know what I mean? So the other roles are underwritten too, like the captain and
Right. Yeah. All
you
the
know
supporting characters. There's barely like we didn't even bring up the supporting characters because they are so there, right?
right.
They're just
Yeah,
there.
it's so yeah, and it's all fine actors in those roles too. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. No, I mean they do
they all do a
jobs
great
with
job.
what they have, but they're not the point,
No,
right?
the point
So
of the story is these three in the cat and mouse game, and the the psychological sort of stakes of what this chase means. You know what I mean? And so the idea that you're going to criticize it just because there's no, I mean, you could have cast, I guess, you could have cast one of the characters as a female, and then they would have had a fantastic role, right? But you
right.
didn't. You cast three Oscar winners, and so I'm not complaining about that. You know,
I mean, I can understand in today's world, thing we've evolved into a point, but it might sound trite, but this could be another homage to the 90s, right?
true,
And also, if you're setting a film in the 90s, women didn't have those roles because of gender inequality,
right,
usually, right?
right. So
I mean, there was. I mean, you do look at uh, Silence of the Lambs and Clarice, but
sure,
she was a junior level FBI agent at that point, right?
right.
So it wasn't like they were the DA or not the DA, but the lead investigator and stuff like that. They usually were support, and so I'm not trying to defend it. I'm just trying to say that
Yeah, you got to look at the context of the time
give
frame
me
too.
context.
Like you said. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that point, but at the same time, even if it was set now, I mean, if you happen to have these three characters are the main part of the movie, whatever those characters are, nobody else is going to get much, much other detail. You know what I mean? Because of
Right.
the
I
nature of
think
this
people
story.
might be saying that they should have cast a woman in one of the roles, and if it was set in modern day, I can totally see that. And it
And
definitely
I
doesn't
totally
pass the Bechdel test. Let's put it that way, right? But
right,
um,
right.
I mean, I
It
can see the other side as well. I can see both sides.
I could see it. I just don't know that it's something that needs to have a high consideration in sort of evaluating the film, because the film is the
Right.
film. You know what I
Right.
mean? And so it's either good or it's not. And that factor does it does it make it good or not? You know what I mean? In my opinion.
I will point out I did really appreciate the role of the coroner.
Yes. Uh huh.
And I don't remember the actress's name, but she was really good. I really enjoyed her, and I would like to see a little bit more of her in it. And she does play a pivotal role.
Absolutely. Mhm.
So
I
um,
agree. And so in hers does actually pass the Bechdel test. Her character. So
right, right.
but
Let me get her name so I don't forget. Michael Hyatt is her name.
yeah, and
She's really good.
she was really good in the film. And again, I think uh, it, I think this could work with someone else in one of the roles, but it just doesn't happen to be that. I mean, if you're John Lee Hancock and you got Denzel Washington, Rami Malek, and Jared Leto, wanting to be in your film, I don't think you say no to that.
Right,
You
right,
know what I'm saying?
right, right. No, but yeah, no. I mean, I can see the argument, but no, I agree. I think it works as it is, and I really was impressed with the acting performances in it. So I don't, I wouldn't change it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, is that all the spoilers that you want to discuss? Because I think, yeah, I mean, I think that's all had to say
Yeah,
about
that's
his eye.
about it. I just wanted to like really talk about how I think the biggest thing for me was the ending, the ambiguous ending was just great for me. I love that how that pays off. It's ambiguous of who did it, but it really isn't. The story's more about more than just that. So
Right,
I'm very satisfied with the conclusion of the movie. I don't need to know whether he was really
right.
guilty or not. So
Right.
that was really cool. And then the second thing I wanted to bring up that I mentioned earlier was that I want to watch this again and see how, now knowing what's really going on affects the way, Denzel delivers his lines, or Rami Malek delivers his lines.
Right. Right.
Because there are some things that, like, on first view, I was like, oh, wasn't what I was expecting him to do or say
Right.
at this point. And I kind of, looking back, I'm like, oh, that does make total sense now. So
Right. No, totally. I think so. And I think, for whatever reason, and I don't want to, to speculate on why, but I think some of the critics that I've seen, at least, have sort of lost a good chance to sort of examine what the movie's really about, and appreciate these really fine performances, and to kind of dismiss this film, because it's a really well made film, and it's, again, the type of film we don't see very much of these days. So I'd love to get more films like this, and they don't have to be serial killers, but I'm just saying this type of movie, a serious adult movie, you know what I mean,
yeah.
adult themed movie,
Well,
you know
and
what
I
I mean?
also can just say that wasn't it nice to actually see a major motion picture?
Totally, absolutely.
I mean, as much as I like indie films and stuff like that, it was great to see, big name actors in a film. It's been a while.
Totally, it
It's been
has
a
been,
while.
and so hopefully this is the year of the major motion pictures again, and we'll see a bunch of them, because I've missed that, and so this was refreshing in that regard too. I agree.
Well, all right. I think we're wrapped up with our review. Once again, I think we both gave it a B plus. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right.
And so check it out if you get a chance, and keep an open mind about it. I mean, if you're listening now, you've probably already seen it, because
Yeah,
we
exactly.
did spoilers. But watch it again. Watch it again. Tell us what you think. Tell us what you think. Anyway, that's it for this week. We'll see you again next week. Like I said, next week we're going to be talking with John Pruner, the host of the Bionic Frankenplot podcast. So that was a lot of fun for us. Check our episode out of that as well. And as always, just please share and like and subscribe and all those great things. They really help us out. And also want to thank Eureka Failure. Once again, they always provide great music for us. Check them out at eurekafailure.bandcamp.com. And Martin, what's your words of wisdom for this week?
Stay warm and stay positive.
And on that note, I'm going to go grab a blanket and curl up with a good movie. And we'll see you next week.